Have you ever had a moment where reality seemed to pause, just long enough to make you uneasy, like when you check the time at exactly the same minute for 3 days in a row? Or you think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and your phone lights up with their name seconds later? Not in a comforting way, but in a way that makes your chest tighten, as if the world just acknowledged you. Most people laugh it off, tell themselves it's coincidence, but that explanation never fully lands. Something feels off, not broken, just watched. What if those moments aren't random glitches, but feedback? What if reality isn't malfunctioning, but reacting to you becoming briefly visible to a system that usually runs unnoticed in the background? The unsettling part isn't that something is controlling your reality. It's that it might only start doing so once your awareness shifts. That uneasy awareness you feel afterward isn't fear, it's recognition. For years, quantum consciousness has been hinting at a hidden reality beneath the surface of everyday life, one that doesn't move until it's observed. Most of the time, we're invisible to it, running on habit, distraction, and repetition. But every so often, something inside you sharpens. You notice patterns. Timing feels too precise. Events line up in ways that don't feel lucky or unlucky, just intentional. If you felt that tightening in your gut, that quiet sense that reality just leaned closer, you're not imagining it. You may be brushing up against the moment where observation stops being passive. And once that happens, the system doesn't reset the same way. The question isn't whether this is happening. It's what changes when you realize it is. Before we go any further, understand this moment isn't meant to be consumed silently. Recognition only becomes real when it's acknowledged. When you press like on this video, you're not signaling approval, you're marking resonance. You're telling the system that this perspective deserves to move forward, that awareness should be amplified instead of buried. And choosing to subscribe isn't about following a creator. It's about entering a conscious movement of people who are done drifting through life on default settings. People who are willing to look directly at the hidden reality instead of being managed by it. There's one simple act that anchors this awareness. In the comments, write this exact phrase: I see the signal. Don't explain it. Don't personalize it. Just place it there. That sentence creates a shared point of recognition between you and everyone else who feels this shift but hasn't had language for it yet. With that intention set, we can move past intuition and into evidence, because what you're about to hear isn't speculation. It's where modern science quietly reveals why observation changes everything. What finally forced science to confront the uncomfortable role of the observer came from an experiment that still unsettles physicists today. In 1978, at Princeton University, physicist John Archibald Wheeler introduced what became known as the delayed choice experiment. Building on earlier double-slit research, Wheeler asked a question that sounded almost absurd at the time. What if a particle doesn't decide what it is until the moment it's observed? Even if that observation happens after the particle has already traveled its path? In the experiment, photons were sent through a system where the decision to measure them as waves or particles was made after they had already passed the critical point where that behavior should have been determined. According to common sense, the outcome should have been locked in, but the results shattered that assumption. The photon behaved as if it had waited for the observer's choice. Measurement didn't reveal reality. It actively participated in creating it. This was the observer effect stripped of comfort, operating directly inside the quantum field. And this means that you are not living inside a static universe that unfolds independently of your awareness. It means your consciousness is constantly in conversation with reality beneath the surface. When life feels unresponsive, repetitive, or resistant, it may not be punishment or failure. It may be that your awareness is operating on autopilot, unseen by the deeper mechanics that respond only to observation. If this lands uncomfortably close to home, that's not an accident. Many people sense this long before they understand it, and that tension you felt has a reason. As research into consciousness expansion continued, physicists began to realize something even more destabilizing. Observation isn't just watching, it's participation. The quantum field doesn't react to effort, desire, or force. It responds to clarity and presence. That's why pushing harder rarely works. and why moments of awareness often come with strange side effects, timing shifts, repeated patterns, the feeling that reality is subtly reorganizing itself around you. If you've noticed that, you're not broken. You're becoming perceptible. But here's where it gets personal. Once observation begins to change outcomes, the real variable isn't the experiment anymore. It's the observer. And that raises a question science is only beginning to approach. What happens when coherence inside the observer increases? Because the next discovery reveals why some people experience these effects intensely, while others never notice them at all. What Wheeler's experiment pointed toward became impossible to ignore once science started, examining coherence and resonance inside the human system itself. In the 1990s, researchers at the HeartMath Institute in California began studying how human physiology interacts with external electromagnetic fields. What they discovered challenged the long-held belief that perception begins and ends in the brain. The heart generates an electromagnetic field thousands of times stronger than the brain's. And when emotional and attentional states became coherent, that field measurably changed. More unsettling still, those changes extended beyond the body, influencing the surrounding quantum field. This wasn't metaphor or spiritual language. Sensors detected synchronization between internal biological rhythms and external environmental fluctuations. And this explains why intuition doesn't arrive as a thought. It arrives as sensation, a pressure in the chest, a tingling along the arms, a sudden clarity that cuts through mental noise before words appear. Your body isn't reacting emotionally in those moments. It's registering alignment. And this explains why, when coherence increases, people often report similar physical experiences without ever comparing notes. Heightened sensitivity, sharper awareness, time feeling stretched or compressed, moments where everything feels suddenly obvious, followed by fatigue or doubt. That isn't confusion. It's resonance recalibrating. When consciousness stops scattering itself across fear, memory, and anticipation, the body becomes a tuning instrument. And reality responds to tuned instruments differently than it responds to static. If you've ever felt your intuition spike right before life shifted course, that wasn't luck. It was feedback. The quantum field doesn't speak in language. It speaks in sensation. And when coherence rises, the signal gets stronger before the mind understands what's happening. That's why this phase can feel destabilizing. You're sensing change before your identity has caught up to it. This is where it becomes deeply human, because increased awareness doesn't come without cost. As coherence grows, misalignment becomes harder to ignore. Old habits feel heavier. Certain relationships feel louder. You may feel exposed, unsure, or strangely alone despite understanding more than ever. That vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the nervous system adjusting to a wider range of perception. And once that adjustment begins, there's no way to pretend you don't feel it anymore. There's a part of this path that almost no one warns you about, and it has nothing to do with enlightenment. It has to do with loneliness. When you begin to see how awareness shapes experience, it becomes harder to pretend you don't notice what's happening beneath the surface. You start hearing what people mean instead of what they say. You feel when something is misaligned long before it falls apart, and that can be exhausting. There were moments when I wished I could unsee it, when doubt crept in and asked whether understanding was worth the distance it quietly creates. You question yourself. You wonder if you're overanalyzing, if you've drifted too far from the comfort of certainty. Fear shows up, not as panic, but as a subtle grief for the simplicity you can't return to. The ego doesn't collapse all at once. It fractures slowly, piece by piece, as old motivations stop working and familiar rewards lose their pull. And standing in that in-between space can feel unsettling, like you stepped out of a story everyone else still believes in. If you felt that sense of being awake while others move automatically, it doesn't mean you're separate from them. It means you're integrating something new. Awareness expands faster than identity can adapt, and that gap is uncomfortable. You're not failing. You're recalibrating. And the doubt you feel isn't weakness. It's the mind trying to catch up to perception. If any of this resonates, you don't need to label it or explain it to anyone. Just allow yourself to stay present with it. There are others who feel the same quiet shift, even if they've never spoken it out loud. This isn't about leaving the world behind. It's about learning how to move through it without betraying what you now see. Because when the ego loosens its grip, something steadier begins to emerge. And that's where real empowerment starts to take shape. What if the very thing you've spent years trying to correct was never meant to be fixed? That sensitivity you learned to suppress. The way you notice shifts in people, timing, and atmosphere before anyone else does. The feeling that you operate on a slightly different frequency than the world around you. Through everything we've walked through, from the observer effect to resonance and coherence, those traits take on a different meaning. They aren't flaws. They're signs of perception extending beyond its default limits. The science quietly supports this reframing. Wheeler showed that reality does not settle until it is observed. Research into coherence revealed that internal alignment organizes the field around you, and the physical sensations you felt, clarity arriving without effort, intuition surfacing before logic, moments when life seems to respond instead of resist, were never random. They were signals that your awareness was interacting with reality more directly than you were taught to expect. Right now, nothing needs to change about who you are. This moment isn't about upgrading yourself or becoming something else. It's about recognition, seeing that the discomfort, the over-awareness, the sense of being out of sync were not evidence of malfunction, but evidence of bandwidth. You were perceiving more information than the old framework could explain. And once that realization lands, the struggle softens. You stop trying to mute your perception and start learning how to stabilize it. Here is the master key most people never encounter. Reality does not respond to intensity, repetition, or force of will. It responds to the quality of awareness meeting the present moment. That's why trying harder never worked, but noticing did. When awareness becomes steady instead of scattered, influence replaces effort. Conditions shift without strain. Patterns loosen. But there is one unsettling idea left unresolved, and it matters. If perception can expand, if awareness can shape outcomes, then what governs the limits of that expansion? Is there a natural boundary built into consciousness itself, or has it simply never been explored with intention? You don't need the answer yet. You only need to feel the weight of the question. Because once perception becomes deliberate, the next phase isn't learning more. It's choosing how consciously you engage with reality from here on. And that choice is closer than it appears. Before you step away, seal this awareness with intention. In the comments, write this exact line. I observe, therefore I influence. Don't expand on it. Don't explain what it means to you. That sentence isn't for performance or validation. It's a marker, a quiet signal that you recognized yourself in this message and chose presence over unconscious momentum. Others who see it will know they're not alone in noticing what most people overlook. If this way of seeing resonates, understand what subscribing represents here. It isn't about content updates or loyalty. It's alignment with a small, deliberate group of people who are willing to question the surface story of reality and engage with what actually shapes it. This space isn't designed for mass appeal. It's built for those who feel the responsibility that comes with expanded perception and are ready to stay conscious as they move forward. And if this perspective unsettled you in the right way, don't stop now. The next video pushes into territory most avoid and reveals how to recognize the moment awareness crosses a point of no return. The simulation has a glitch. 3 signs you've finally woken up. Your consciousness brought you here. What happens now is your choice.